The station groaned like a dying beast. Metal walls contracted in the cold void, producing echoes that traveled through empty corridors where no one lived anymore. Station Erebus had been abandoned for 3 years, left to rot in orbit around Phobos Minor, a moon that had lost its mining value when the corporations found richer worlds elsewhere. Jack's Meridian didn't mind the ghosts. Dead stations meant unclaimed salvage, and unclaimed salvage meant credits. He moved through the darkness with practiced ease, his helmet light cutting through the gloom, highlighting floating debris and frozen condensation. His suit was patched in a dozen places, but it held pressure. And that was what mattered out here. He'd been working the outer ring for 2 hours, pulling copper wiring from abandoned quarters, when his scanner picked up something unusual. A power signature, faint but steady, coming from the old research wing. That was strange. Everything here should have been cold and dead. X hesitated at the sealed door. The research wing had been off limits even before the evacuation, marked with biohazard warnings that still glowed faintly in the darkness. Smart salvagers avoided those sections. Too many ways to die from things you couldn't see, but the power signature was growing stronger on his scanner. Something was active in there, running on backup systems that had somehow survived 3 years of neglect. That meant tech worth real money. He overrode the door lock with his multi-tool, and the hatch slid open with a hiss of equalized pressure. The corridor beyond was different from the rest of the station, cleaner. The walls were lined with what looked like medical equipment, all dark now, but preserved in the airless cold. His boots made soft magnetic clicks as he walked, following the signal deeper into the wing. The power signature led him to a laboratory that made his skin crawl. Examination tables with restraints. Injection systems built into the walls. Computer banks that probably held data worth killing for, if they still worked. But what caught his attention was the large cylindrical chamber in the center of the room, still glowing with a soft blue light. A biocontainment pod, and there was something inside it. X approached slowly, his heart hammering. Through the frosted glass, he could make out a shape. Humanoid, but not quite human. He wiped the condensation away with his gloved hand and felt his breath catch. A girl floated in the suspension fluid, her body curled in a fetal position. But she wasn't entirely human. Silver blue scales covered her arms and legs in elegant patterns that caught the light. Small, curved horns emerged from white hair that drifted around her face like a halo. A tail, slender and graceful, wrapped around her body protectively. She was beautiful. And she was dying. The pod systems were failing. Red warning lights blinked across the control panel, indicating critical power loss. The suspension fluid had turned cloudy, contaminated. Frost crept across the glass from a malfunctioning cooling system. The backup power keeping her alive would fail completely within hours. Jocks should have walked away. This was bigger than salvage. This was corporate property, illegal experimentation, the kind of thing that got curious people disappeared. But as he stood there, the girl's eyes fluttered open. Golden eyes, bright as stars, locked onto his. There was awareness in that gaze, and something else. Desperation. A silent plea. His hand moved to the emergency release. Before his brain could override it, the pod hissed and drained rapidly, the fluid sluicing away through floor vents. The glass panel slid open, and the girl collapsed forward into his arms. She was cold, so cold, and lighter than she should have been. Her skin felt strange under his gloves, smooth scales over soft flesh. She gasped, coughing up fluid, her body convulsing. Jocks held her steady, wrapping his emergency thermal blanket around her shaking frame. She was covered in injection marks, old scars, and what looked like burn marks across her shoulders and back. Hey, you're okay," he murmured, surprised by the gentleness in his own voice. "I've got you. You're safe." Her golden eyes found his face again, focusing with difficulty. Her lips moved, trying to form words, but only a whisper emerged. Cold, Jocks made a decision that would change everything. He couldn't leave her here. Whatever she was, whatever they'd done to her, she deserved better than dying alone in this tomb. He lifted her carefully, adjusting her weight in his arms, and started back toward his ship. The walk through the station felt longer carrying her. She drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally making small sounds of pain. Once, she pressed her face against his chest, and he felt the heat of her breath through his suit. She was warming up, her body temperature rising rapidly from hypothermic to something approaching normal. Then beyond, his ship, the Wanderer, was a modified cargo hauler that had seen better decades. But it was home, and more importantly, it had a medical bay. Jocks sealed them inside, pressurized the cabin, and carried the girl to the med-unit. He removed his helmet and got his first clear look at her in proper lighting. She was young, maybe early 20s, and achingly fragile despite the otherworldly features. The scales that covered her skin shimmered with an inner light, and her white hair fell past her shoulders in waves. The horns were small, barely protruding, elegant rather than threatening. As he worked to clean her wounds and attach monitoring sensors, she stirred. Her hand caught his wrist with surprising strength, and those golden eyes opened again. Clearer now. "You came back," she whispered, her voice rough from disuse. "I never left," Jocks replied. "They always leave." A tear tracked down her scaled cheek. "Everyone leaves." Jocks found himself brushing the tear away with his thumb, a gesture so intimate it surprised him. "I'm not everyone." "What's your name?" She blinked slowly, as if trying to remember something from a very long time ago. "Nira. They called me Nira." "I'm Jocks. You're on my ship now, Nira. You're safe here." She studied his face for a long moment, searching for deception and finding none. Her grip on his wrist relaxed slightly. "Why did you save me?" It was a good question. Jocks thought about the smart answer, the practical one about salvage rights and potential information. But looking into those golden eyes, he found himself telling the truth instead. "Because you asked me to." Nira's eyes widened slightly, then closed as exhaustion claimed her again. But her hand remained wrapped around his wrist, holding on like an anchor. As Jocks sat beside her, watching the medical monitors track her stabilizing vitals, he realized the scanner on his belt was chiming. Warning signals. The station was coming alive, automated systems activating in sequence. Security protocols responding to the opened biocontainment pod. They had to leave. Now, he started to pull away, but Nira's grip tightened even in sleep. Her body temperature was still rising, the monitors showing readings that should have been impossible. Her skin began to glow faintly, a soft orange light emanating from beneath the scales. "What are you?" Jocks murmured as if in answer. A small flame flickered to life in her free hand, dancing across her palm without burning her skin. Then it died as quickly as it had appeared, and Nira settled deeper into sleep. Jax carefully extracted himself and ran for the cockpit. The Wanderer's engines roared to life, and he disengaged from the station's docking ring. As they pulled away, he saw lights activating throughout Erebus, section by section. Like a beast waking from hibernation, someone knew what he'd taken, and they were coming for it, for her. He set a course for the outer territories, places where questions weren't asked, and authorities didn't look too closely. Behind him, in the medical bay, Nira slept on, small flames occasionally flickering across her skin, like dreams made visible. Jocks didn't know what he'd gotten himself into. But as he guided his ship away from the dying station and toward the deep black, he found he didn't regret his choice. Not yet, anyway. The Wanderer drifted through the asteroid belt of the Kesper system, running dark to avoid detection. Jocks had killed all non-essential systems, relying on the rocks to hide his heat signature from any pursuing ships. For 3 days, they'd been ghosts in the black, and for 3 days, Nira had slept. He sat beside her now, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest. The medical monitors had stopped making sense after the first day. Her body temperature fluctuated wildly, sometimes dropping to near hypothermic levels, other times spiking so high the sensors shut down in protest. Yet she seemed comfortable, her face peaceful in sleep. Jacques had cleaned her wounds, changed her into one of his oversized shirts, and done what he could with the ship's limited medical supplies. The injection marks on her arms were healing impossibly fast, the bruises fading from purple to yellow in hours instead of days. The scales on her skin seemed to shimmer more brightly each day, as if her body was remembering something it had forgotten. He found himself studying her more than he should. The curve of her horns, the delicate way her tail moved even in sleep, the slight points of her ears. She was unlike anything he'd ever seen, and that fascinated him in ways that had nothing to do with salvage or credits. On the 4th morning, her eyes opened. Jacques had been dozing in the chair beside her bed when he felt the temperature change. Heat, sudden and intense, radiated from her body. He jerked awake to find Nira sitting up, golden eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Where am I?" Her voice was stronger now, no longer the broken whisper from before. "My ship, the Wanderer." Jacques kept his voice calm, now unthreatening. "You've been asleep for 4 days. How do you feel?" Nira looked down at her hands, turning them over as if seeing them for the first time. Small flames danced across her fingertips, and she gasped, shaking them frantically to extinguish the fire. It didn't work. The flames grew brighter, crawling up her arms. "No, no, no," she whispered, panic rising in her voice. "Not again. I can't control it. I can't. Hey." Jacques moved closer, ignoring the heat. "Look at me, Nira. Look at me." Her eyes snapped to his face, terror clear in those golden depths. "You're safe here. Whatever happens, you're safe. Just breathe. You don't understand." The flames climbed higher, licking across her shoulders. The blanket beneath her began to smoke. "When I lose control, people get hurt. That's why they locked me away. That's why. I'm not them." Jacques held her gaze steadily. "And I'm not afraid of you." It was a lie. He was terrified. But something in his voice must have reached her, because Nira took a shuddering breath, then another. Slowly, the flames began to recede, pulling back down her arms until they flickered out entirely. She stared at her hands again, this time with something like wonder. It listened. I told it to stop, and it listened. "You're stronger than you think," Jacques said softly. Nira looked up at him, and for a moment, something passed between them. Gratitude, recognition, the beginning of trust. Then her stomach growled loudly, breaking the moment. Despite everything, Jacques laughed. "When's the last time you ate?" She thought about it, her expression growing distant. "I don't remember. Months, maybe?" They kept me in suspension. Saida was too dangerous to wake. "Well, you're awake now. And I make a mean protein stew." Over the next few hours, Jacques learned more about his unexpected passenger. She ate carefully at first, as if unused to the sensation, then with growing enthusiasm. Real food, she said, tasted like a memory she'd almost forgotten. Between bites, she told him fragments of her story. She remembered a laboratory, scientists in white coats, endless tests. They'd been trying to create something, she said, a weapon that could burn worlds. They'd taken children with specific genetic markers and altered them, spliced their DNA with something ancient, something that shouldn't exist anymore. "Dragons," she whispered, the word hanging in the air like smoke. "They said our ancestors were dragons, creatures of pure fire and will. They wanted to bring that power back, to control it." Did it work? Jocks asked. Neera's laugh was bitter. Too well. Most of the children died in the process. Their bodies couldn't handle the changes. I survived, but I couldn't control it. Every time I got emotional, angry, scared, even happy, the fire would come. I hurt people, Jocks. I burned the handlers who tried to help me. So they locked me away and forgot about me. They didn't forget, Jocks said quietly. The station's security systems activated when I opened your pod. Someone's looking for you. Fear flashed across her face, and the temperature in the room spiked again. Jocks saw flames begin to kindle in her hair, tiny sparks that danced between the white strands. Hey, remember what we did before? Breathe. You control it, not the other way around. Neera closed her eyes, focusing. The flames guttered and died. When she opened her eyes again, there was determination there, alongside the fear. Teach me, please. I don't want to be afraid of myself anymore. So they began. The cargo hold became their training ground. Jocks cleared a space among the salvaged equipment and set up targets made from scrap metal. Neera stood in the center, her hands outstretched, trying to summon fire deliberately instead of letting it burst out in panic. Feel it, Jocks coached, watching from a safe distance. Don't fight it. Just ... Guide it. A flame appeared in her palm, small and flickering. Neera's face screwed up in concentration, and the flame grew larger, then smaller, responding to her will. Good. Now direct it. She thrust her hand forward, and a gout of flame shot across the hold, splashing against a metal target. The metal glowed red-hot, then white, before starting to melt. I did it. Neera's face lit up with joy, and immediately flames erupted across her entire body in response to her excitement. Control, Jocks reminded her, but he was grinning. They practiced for hours each day. Neera learned to summon fire, to shape it, to extinguish it. She learned that her emotions fed the flames, but that she could breathe through the emotions, channel them instead of being consumed by them. And in the quiet moments between training, when they sat together in the galley or watched the asteroids drift past the viewports, something else grew between them. Jocks found himself watching the way she moved, graceful despite the tail that swayed behind her, the way she laughed when something surprised her, a sound like bells, the way she looked at him sometimes, with a mixture of curiosity and something deeper. Nira, for her part, couldn't stop studying Jocks, the careful way he moved through his ship, knowing every inch of it, the gentleness in his rough hands when he helped adjust her stance during training, the way he never flinched from her flames, never treated her like the monster she'd been told she was. One evening, as they sat together watching an asteroid slowly tumble past, Neera spoke softly. Why did you really save me, Jocks? He was quiet for a long moment. Honest answer? Always. I don't know. I saw you in that pod, and I saw someone who'd been thrown away like garbage. I've been there. Not literally, but I know what it's like when the universe decides you're not worth keeping. He turned to look at her, and maybe I saw someone worth saving. Neera's breath caught. Even though I'm dangerous? Even though people are hunting me? Especially because of that. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. Her skin was warm, almost hot, but it didn't burn. You deserve a chance to be more than what they made you. She squeezed his hand, and for a moment, her whole body glowed softly, warm light emanating from beneath her scales. But it wasn't the wild fire of panic. It was controlled, gentle, like a hearth fire on a cold night. I've never had anyone believe in me before, she whispered. Get used to it. Their moment was shattered by the proximity alarm. Jocks was on his feet instantly, running for the cockpit. Neera followed, her tail whipping behind her in agitation. The scanner showed a ship approaching, sleek and fast, cutting through the asteroid field with practiced ease. Military-grade sensors swept across their position. "They found us," Nira breathed, her voice tight with fear. Jax's hands flew across the controls, bringing the Wanderer systems online. But even as the engines rumbled to life, he knew it was hopeless. They were running on fumes, and that ship out there was fresh and fully armed. "Can you fight?" he asked Nira. She looked at her hands, flames already beginning to kindle. "I can try." The pursuing ship opened a communication channel, and a face appeared on the screen. A man in his 40s, sharp-featured and cold-eyed, wearing the insignia of a corporate security officer. "Salvage your vessel. Power down your engines. You're in possession of stolen property. Return Subject 79er Nira immediately, and you'll be compensated for your trouble." "She's not property," Jax said flatly. "She's a person." The man's smile was thin and cruel. "She's a weapon we spent considerable resources developing. And weapons don't get to choose where they're aimed. Power down, or we'll disable your ship and take her by force." Jax looked at Nira. She stood beside his chair, flames dancing across her skin, her golden eyes blazing with fury and fear in equal measure. In that moment, seeing her ready to fight for her freedom, he made his choice. "Nira, hold on to something." He slammed the throttle forward. The Wanderer surged ahead, diving between two massive asteroids. The pursuing ship followed, firing warning shots that carved through space where they'd been moments before. Jax threw the ship into a spin, using the asteroids as cover, pushing the old vessel harder than he'd ever dared. But their pursuer was better equipped and better trained. A tractor beam locked onto their hull, and the Wanderer shuddered to a violent halt. Jax fought the controls, but it was useless. They were caught. "Jax," Nira said softly. Her skin was glowing now, bright as a star, heat radiating from her in waves. "I can stop them." "Nira? No. They'll never stop hunting me. You know that." She turned to face him, and in her eyes he saw not fear but resolution. "But I'm not the frightened girl in the pod anymore. You helped me remember what I am." She placed her hand against the inner airlock door. "Thank you, Jax Meridian, for giving me 4 days of being human." Wait, but she was already moving. She opened the inner door, stepped into the airlock, and sealed it behind her. Through the small window, she looked back at him one last time and smiled. Then she opened the outer door and stepped into space.ja. X screamed her name, but it was lost in the sudden decompression alert. He watched through the viewport as Nira floated in the void, surrounded by the cold black and the distant stars dot, and then she ignited. Fire erupted from her body. Not the small controlled flames of their training, but an inferno that defied physics. In the vacuum of space, where there was no oxygen to burn, Nira became a sun. Her body transformed, growing larger, scales spreading across every inch of skin. Her horns lengthened, elegant and terrible. Wings of pure flame unfurled from her back. The dragon they had tried to create finally emerged. She was magnificent and terrifying, a creature of primal fire and ancient power. And she was heading straight for their pursuers. The corporate ship tried to flee, but it was too late. Nira struck like a comet, her flames washing over their hull. Systems overloaded. Weapons melted. The tractor beam released the Wanderer as all power diverted to shields that couldn't withstand her heat. JAX watched in awe and horror as the creature that had been. Nira disabled the ship with surgical precision, destroying weapons but leaving life support intact. She wasn't a mindless beast. Even transformed, she was still herself. Then she turned back toward the Wanderer, and Jax's heart clenched. Would she remember him? Or had the transformation taken her too far beyond humanity? She approached slowly, flame still dancing across her dragon form. Through the viewport, Her golden eyes met his, and in them he saw recognition, relief, and something else that made his breath catch. Then, as he watched, she began to change back. The wings folded and dissolved. Her body contracted. The flames died down until only the girl remained, floating in space, unconscious. Jacques didn't think. He grabbed an emergency suit and hit the airlock. In minutes, he was outside, mag boots activated, pulling Nira's limp form back to safety. She was cold now, all the heat burned out of her, but alive. Still alive. Back inside, he held her in the medical bay, monitoring her vitals, waiting for her to wake. The damaged corporate ship was limping away, no doubt calling for reinforcements. They needed to run, to hide somewhere deep in the outer colonies, where questions weren't asked. But first, Nira needed to wake up. Hours passed. Then, as the Wanderer jumped to FTL, putting distance between them and their hunters, her eyes fluttered open. "Did I hurt anyone?" were her first words. Jacques couldn't help it. He laughed, a sound somewhere between relief and disbelief. "You disabled their ship and let them live. You were ... amazing." Nira sat up slowly, looking at her hands as if expecting them to be different. "I remember everything. I was fire, Jacques. I was alive in a way I've never been before. And through it all, I thought of you. That kept me from losing myself completely." Their eyes met, and the air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken words. "We should run," Jacques said softly. "As far and as fast as we can. They'll send more ships, I know." Nira reached out, her hand cupping his cheek. Her skin was warm again, but gentle. "But wherever we run together. Yes?" Jacques turned his face into her palm, pressing a kiss there. Together. Outside the viewport, stars streaked past as the Wanderer fled into the deep black. Behind them, hunters gathered. Ahead, an uncertain future waited. But in the medical bay of a salvager's ship, two souls who'd found each other against impossible odds held tight and refused to let go. The fire had awakened, and nothing would ever be the same.